Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by oldsschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Welcome everybody to a very special episode of Casual Chats in honor of Christmas. I am Patricia. And
yay!
I know, yay, Christmas. I'm here with a few special guests, returning from a whole bunch of podcasts that we've had, such as the Amblimation Trilogy podcast, the Fox Animation Studios podcast, and many more. We have James, aka Jaimetud. Welcome back, James.
Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Christopher Lee, the only actor to go from playing Scrooge to King Herod, 2 Christmas villains for the price of 1 actor.
There you go. And we have joining us, we have Morgan from Vaulting. Welcome, Morgan.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. And by the way, my name is David Huddleston around this time of year.
Oh, okay. My name, this time of year, my name is Rachel Shmoygan.
If you know your Christmas movies, you'd get that joke.
Around this time of year, my name is Happy Hanukkah. No.
Ooh.
And finally, last but certainly not least, we have Dukect, who does various shows and various podcasts from wrestling, animation, all that stuff. So welcome, Duke.
I am a master of everything and nothing. How are you doing this, ladies? How are you doing this Christmas and jolly atmosphere, everyone? Hope y'all doing well.
Yes. So, in honor of the 175th anniversary of A Christmas Carol, which came out on the 23rd of December, 1843, written by Charles Dickens, we decided that we were going to discuss about some of our favorite adaptations of A Christmas Carol. I briefly talked about this on my first Christmas podcast over 5 years ago. So I thought it's about time that we give a little bit more in depth about it because, my God, there's a lot of them. Now, I want to ask you guys, were you first introduced to A Christmas Carol with the book or one of the adaptations?
Adaptations.
I think I remember reading the book when I was young, but mostly from adaptations.
I did it from Pages to Pictures episode back in 2012, basically where I talked about the history of Christmas Carol adaptations, and I believe I mentioned the first one that I saw as a kid was the Mickey's Christmas Carol version, which every time it grows on me, it's grown on me over the years because I look back on it and I say every time I know my Christmas Carol whatnot, I know the lines, I know how you make the proper Christmas Carol adaptation now because you got it. There are some lines in there that you just have to have, and you look at the Mickey version and they throw most of that out the window, but they still manage to make it work because the Disney characters are allowed to be themselves within this story universe. I think one particular example, when Scrooge McDuck, in the role of Scrooge, is talking to the people collecting money for the poor in the beginning, he tells them, well, if I give you money for the poor, then you'll be out of a job, and we wouldn't want that now, would we? And I think back on that, I say, that's different from the book, but it is such a Scrooge McDuck move. If you ever read the Scrooge comics by Carl Barks, he's always saying stuff like that to try to get out of giving money to people, and I find that more hilarious as I look back on it.
Yeah. I'm actually curious, was this Scrooge McDuck's first animated adaptation?
No, that was... they did one back one as far back as the 40s with Donald Duck thinking about what he's ready to do with his wartime money. That was the origins of the story right there. That was the origins of the Scrooge McDuck character, and then later they adapted him for the comics, and the rest was sort of history. They did one back in the 60s, I think, just for Disneyland, where he's talking to the boys, that he's talking to Huey, Dewey, and Louie about how to invest money or something like that. I don't think I saw that one, but
oh my god, something for Disneyland. What was it, like a tax ride or something? Come over,
maybe.
You're gonna learn how to draw your favorite Disney characters, and you're gonna learn how to work on Wall Street.
Well, that's pretty much
I'll teach you.
Well, that's mostly what Disney is right now. Just mostly teaching. They taught everything, so it wouldn't be surprised them teaching how to, manage stocks or do the most legal and illegal things on Wall Street to do.
Sure.
I expect that to be on Disney Plus next year.
Yes. I cannot wait to learn about taxes from Donald Duck. I'm going to distribute to my 401k.
Well, Donald Duck has already taught us all about Mexico and math, so
Yeah.
why not?
For me,
fair enough.
personally, Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol was definitely one of the very first ones. But there were two others as well. One was more of the light side of Christmas Carol, in the similar vein as Mickey's Christmas Carol, and the other was the darker side of what a Christmas Carol adaptation can be, or how far is it can go. And in terms of the lighter case, it was Muppets Christmas Carol, because I was big into the Muppets back then, and anything that had Jim Henson's name, I would literally gobble it up. And it was just so interesting how they took these colorful characters and put them in a grimy Victorian backdrop. And as grim as the cinematography looks, you just see these characters and they're just having a ball telling this variation of their own tale. And don't get me wrong, I really love Mickey's Christmas Carol. I really, watched a lot of it as a kid because it was half an hour, it was very short. But just how this version doesn't shy away from the darker elements of the tale was just very interesting, how they really keep that message intact. And for them to start this project right after the death of Jim Henson, it really made sense to have their foot in the door.
Robin died for your sins, man.
Thanks. Oh, the story I could tell with that one. Regardless. But no, it made sense to start off with something, light, but also showed, hey, we're going in this direction and seeing what we can do. And it's often to do like a crossover Christmas Carol with like a certain brand or a property, because there's a certain basic formula to it. But at the same time, the one that I saw that was technically the mature ones was Scrooge with Bill Murray. And
oh, yes, that one.
Yes.
I recently got into that one. It was.
I remember seeing that. Was like maybe 6 or 7. Like I was at that point when I was like seeing, things like that. And I just remember it stuck with me so much. It just embodied the darkness and the lightness of the Charles Dickens classic. When it goes into those dark moments, they don't shy away, and it doesn't feel too enforced. It just, I think it works perfectly. Like the scenes with Christmas Future, for example, because after everything with Buster Poindexter as Christmas Past and Carol Kane as Christmas Present, who is actually my favorite one of the ghosts, by the way. I feel bad for when you hear the behind-the-scenes stories, but I'll get into them later. It's just so interesting how they're able to take the old and like give it a fresh, modern update. And I think in terms of making a modern Christmas Carol, that's as perfect as it's going to get. And I know about the production problems it had with Richard Donner and his scuffles with Bill Murray working on that movie and stuff like that. But I still think it holds up very well. I watch it every year in one of his best Oscar-nominated roles since Shakes the Clown. How do you not love that?
Yes, and just, his downfall throughout the whole film, he gets fired and this, and then takes the shotgun, and yet, I love the fact that at the end he's just like dancing, Bill Murray's dancing with the shotgun. I'm like, wow.
Didn't care the day before Christmas? Merry Christmas!
Yeah,
so many of his lines I love so much.
The balance, the balance there.
You have a bad day.
Yeah, the balance there in terms of having Christmas Carol in a modern context. I don't think they could have done much better there. They certainly tried with All American Christmas Carol, but good God, if you see that pop up on Netflix,
the Fonz is Scrooge. That's all you need to know. The Fonz is Scrooge.
No. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about a more recent one where they.
Oh.
No, you're thinking of American Christmas Carol from the 70s. I'm talking about All American Christmas Carol.
That one with the Michael Moore parody and
No. I'm talking about that one's a guilty pleasure. I'm talking about
it's Citizen Kane. It's Citizen Kane. No,
no. Even All American Christmas Carol was one where the Scrooge character is a baby mama who's got this attitude saying work is for suckers, and I'm just watching this one. I'm saying you have a perfect flip here, where instead of a greedy old miser, this is a young woman who refuses to work or have any money, period, and screwing over her kids in the process, but doesn't realize it. And somehow they try to make this funny, but it's a redneck mama with a redneck family and all this and all that, and it's.
Oh,
that sounds really bad.
It's out. I'm looking at it right now. It came out in 2013. That probably explains why.
Yeah, this is what we call the bad period of Christmas Carol adaptations. Anything after Muppet Christmas Carol. Well, not everything, but just it seems like we lost the magic.
Well, let's be honest. The stories and we had about the Christmas Carol. I mean, you had the Muppet Christmas Carol, the you had the animated one. Me, honestly, there's been when I look back and see the adaptation of Christmas Carol, when I remember, I looked at when I was a kid. It wasn't Scrooge. It was actually Scrooged and such. It was, believe it or not, I believe it was I believe when growing up, I was I believe, funny enough, the animated version of Christmas Carol with the voice of Tim Curry. I think I grew up watching that.
I've been curious about that one.
Yeah, I watched it once, and I was like, it's. I don't remember much of it. It was fine, but there were others. The other stuff for Christmas carols, because again, there were so many others. Personally, I liked there was a Bugs Bunny Christmas Carol. There was a Flintstones Christmas Carol. I remember that as a kid as well. And the George C. Scott one as Ebenezer Scrooge in 1984.
General Patton as Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yes, there was exactly. There was some good stuff, but I think the one thing why people look like it seems to have been done before, I think one thing a lot of people would say is like the opposite of it. The ones where you say, oh, it's good to be a Rotten Bastard version. Like, the first was Blackadder. I believe did that, like the reversal of having, the Blackadder who was actually good, then turned to Rotten Bastard. And then you had others, like Married with Children. I
have to watch that one. Well, let's stop and discuss Blackadder really quickly, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I think that one's interesting because I don't agree with him as a moral at the day saying, let's turn you into a rotten bastard at the end. But think of it this way. Everybody else was taking advantage of his niceness. So everyone else is part of the problem as well.
Oh, yeah, everyone taking advantage. And
that's why I still find that funny.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have the lesser said the better, a special Sesame Street Christmas, which is the Christmas Carol adaptation we don't talk about for good reason.
The what?
Okay, long story short, in 1978, we got not one but two Sesame Street Christmas specials. And let me put it this way, it was pretty much there.
Wake up.
sorry about that. It was their Star Wars holiday special. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, I see. Oh wait,
Yes,
yeah, I think I remember what you're talking about, because I think Allison talked about those two, many years ago, where she was talking about like both of the Sesame Street specials. Now I think I remember now.
Yeah, people refer to that one. Yes, it's the one with Michael Jackson's 5-second cameo.
Right.
Is this the one with where they forgot how to spell Carol Spinney's name for the credits?
Actually, they did it both in Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, but this one's a little more aggravating because they tried to make a variety special out of it. And something I just found out, apparently at the time, CBS knew they had 2 specials going out at the time. And I'm just going to read a quote here straight from this. Paul Fisberg was CTW's executive vice president at the time when they were doing Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, and one of his most baffling decisions was to sign a deal that same year for the CBS Sesame Street special, and he questioned the wisdom of the 2 specials competing. Paul replied, "If we proceed with 2 shows, maybe one will make it to air." Can you imagine that mentality? He had a complete lack of understanding of the show.
Oh, that's a bad. That's kind of a bad Rush idea on the surface.
And that explains why it became as it is.
Okay,
it feels rushed.
I see.
But yeah, it's just that, again, I think a lot of the Rush, that stuff. And I think the one problem you look at Christmas Christmas, a carol is just. I think it's because some people feel like it's get a little tired and such, and some people look at other Christmas stories and such that as talked about. Like, for example, It's a Wonderful Life. You see, It's a Wonderful Life, or I'm trying to think of other Christmas stuff.
A Christmas Story.
Christmas Story. And
what Christmas Tale does not get enough attention?
Which one?
Gift of the Magi.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, I need to look into that eventually.
I just rewatched Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas this morning and realized they did a good job adapting that story for that movie. But there are very few adaptations of that.
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
Gift of the Magi is a really good one. I guess maybe because it's really short that maybe they won't. I mean, unless, they can be able to think of creative ways to stretch it out, maybe they haven't really thought too much on it. That's true.
And also, here's some other Christmas movies. I mean, I know it's a bit the controversial side these days, but Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer,
I actually think some of the sequels were a little bit better than the original, but go on.
But yeah, there's other stuff that has taken over, over that type of the story. The story has been, they say it's been done, and there's other stories, come together. And someone say, what's the point of having this same story, like this? And is there any connective, anything that not connect, but something that's will connect to people now? Is A Christmas Carol, some people say, oh, Christmas Carol is not relevant today, and I just don't believe that. I know there's ways to actually bring about that story about what Charles Dickens, about an elderly man who wakes up and realizes that to become more kinder and such, and that sort of thing, because reminded of his failings and realizes that you can't take that stuff to the grave with you. But yeah, it's just, I think, a story like that to really wake someone up, to that type of oh my gosh, you have to be, this is your life, this is what you will be remembered as, not as some you'll be remembered as a miserable old crone who just saved all this money and miserly and just saved it all up for what purpose? In the end, nothing. No wealth given to his family or anything else. But
there is the death tax.
True.
That's true.
But at the end of the day, he became more of a wealthier man by sharing and giving back to the community, not just hoarding it, and giving back to the community, helping people, helping his family out. I remember that one scene in Muppet Christmas Carol that he goes, as Eminent Screws, gosh, I can't remember the man's name. I'm so sorry. He was, Michael Caine. Michael Caine. Going,
good old Michael Caine.
Yes. Going around singing and just walking down, giving everyone gifts, and being more generous and more loving. And that to me, you can still do that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, fun fact about Michael Caine, they interviewed him, what I think it was last year, and one of the things he said about being in that film was he loves watching it every year, particularly with his grandkids, because it's a little bit more personal for them. They watch the movie and they're like, oh, it's granddad in this movie going around with the Muppets and having all kinds of fun. That's why it's a little bit it's more than just a movie in that particular family.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. It depends on which Christmas Carol that you are associated with, whether you were introduced to it in, whether it be the Alistair Sim version, whether it be the George C. Scott version, whether it be any of the animated adaptations. I think that for every generation, it seems that every single one of them has that sense of the message that seems to really generate towards why people still come to the story over and over and over again. It's the message of it's the message of giving. It's the message of realizing that doing good is more important than just being greedy and saving up money and just caring all about profit. And
a movie about a redemption too, about Scrooge trying to redeem himself with his actions and saying that it's not too late. You can be, it doesn't matter how old you are or anything else, you still have a chance to be have a redemption arc and such. There is no, that's it. No, that you have a chance. Doesn't matter how old you are or anything else. You can come back and try to help many people, as much people as you can.
Yeah, actually, I remember watching the versions from the 30s and the 50s way back in 2012, just doing research purposes, and I've come to the conclusion that whenever you're adapting the story, usually your best bet is to stay as close to the source material as possible. That's why I think some of the television adaptations don't work quite as well, because they get lost in translation.
And also some of the animated adaptations have to force in like some sort of animal sidekick that was not really needed.
Yeah, well, there are places that they did well of doing that animation and such. I mean, you look at, say, the Mickey Carol. I think they did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
I'm talking more about like the animal sidekick, like
from A Christmas Carol the movie, or the Christmas Carol where they had BAH Humbug from Stingiest Man in Town.
Okay, that was a good one.
The movie was an animated movie that came out in 2001. That was mixed of live action and animation that has Nicolas Cage in it.
Yeah, that's the one. Christmas Carol the movie. Yeah, where they had the two talking mice. Which, by the way, for a little self-promotion, a little promotion, my friend Kyle Nordy actually covered that one recently, so I'll leave a link to his video so you can watch him suffer.
The Kate Winslet hit single that came with that one was better than the movie.
I just want to say for the record, don't you dare come down on Walter Matthau Scrooge. That is an amazing one.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, it is. We were just giving examples about like adding animal characters that weren't needed.
No.
Yeah, like there was one that they had a talk. There was one that had a dog or something.
Yes, there was.
That was
the Tim Curry one.
Yeah, the Tim Curry one.
Yeah, the
of
Tim
course
Curry
you have
one.
a dog.
97.
You always have one. It just seems like they're always going to have a dog. It's very interesting that you look at all the other ones that have came in movies or television. Is the different type of stuff, or you look at like the theater presentations of it. This is, again, it's a theater play because back in 1988 you had Patrick Stewart actually doing the entire thing. One man's reading and acting of the story and such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Patrick Stewart. Oh, the Hallmark version.
No, he's talking
about the theater.
Yeah, he's talking about that Patrick Stewart actually did a one-man show of Scrooge.
Oh, that I did not know about.
I heard about it, but I never got a chance to see it.
This conversation a little bit in a bit of a different direction here.
Sure. Go ahead.
Because there was a movie that I saw recently from last year that has to do with A Christmas Carol, but more or less the writing of the story. Have you guys seen The Man Who Invented Christmas?
Oh, I got to see that one this year.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's on. Well, Morgan, it's on Amazon Prime. I know you can watch that.
Oh, cool.
So yes, this is one where Dan Stevens plays Charles Dickens, and it's a story about the writing of The Christmas Carol, the book. It's fairly honest to the actual story of the writing of it, and at the same time they keep the watcher interested by throwing in a lot of different references towards the book that, if you're a fan of the story to begin with, you might be able to catch. One thing that Charles Dickens always did, especially with his work, was he always, like many great authors, he wrote what he knew. That's where, if you look at some of his other works where he talks about growing up in poverty, which is something that he actually did, unfortunately. He worked as a child for a guy named Fagin, which is where the character from Oliver Twist comes from, for example. When it came to writing Christmas Carol, he didn't have very much time to actually write it and finish it. He wrote it in about 6 weeks just to make it in time for the holiday. And during this time, his publisher actually rejected the book. They said, we don't really do Christmas stuff because what is Christmas? Not many people celebrated it, not as many people celebrated it anymore during that time period in which it was actually released. And they did something very cute, showing this scene in the movie where the publisher rejecting his material. They said nobody really takes time off from Christmas from anymore, except for this one lady who's our secretary. Yeah, what is Christmas anymore except for picking a man's pocket every December the 25th? So Charles Dickens is looking at the guy who's doing his publishing. He just sort of acknowledges this line, and you're like, oh, I see what you did there. They have little lines here and there that mirror the lines from the story. And while writing the story of A Christmas Carol, this is something that Charles Dickens always did with his writing material. If he would lock himself up in his room, and he would imagine having conversations with his own characters. You have Christopher Plummer coming into his room as the character of Ebenezer Scrooge. It's so amazing to see the writer and his creation bounce off of each other while the writing process is going. It makes it for not just for a good adaptation, a good partial adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but also an interesting behind the scenes. It's very surreal. It's very fourth wall, and just this once, I would like to say I don't really care about how how accurate or historically accurate this movie is when coming to showing the writing of the book. I just found the end product entertaining, and I think that's if you love the story of A Christmas Carol that much, this is a movie that you should see.
The book, and again, it's very interesting that the book that you don't really see the 5-act structure in this stuff, because again, you see the beginning of Ebenezer, Cruz talking about all this other stuff, and then you see about the ghosts, and then next year the Christmas past come in. That's Steve 2. Mm-hmm. There's 3 Christmas present, then the Christmas future, and then the part 5, or that sort of thing, is he became a changed man. That was a play of 5 acts and such. It's very, it's a very interesting thing, because a lot of people will look at, a story like that as, wasn't really much at the time. It plays 5 acts and everything else. But I think when you look at the way it was written, and it's amazing that, to me, that a story that was in the 1870s that can
1840s.
The 1840s, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But but 1840s to have a connection now. How many stories were written back then that doesn't even have any reference like 10 years later into that time, much less, now.
I can think of a few, but they're all by Charles Dickens.
So, Oliver Twist, Hard Times.
David Copperfield, Nicholas Nickleby.
I also want to say, before I actually saw this movie earlier on this year, I also saw another movie from 2017. Was All the Money in the World, also with Christopher Plummer, which was a reenactment of the Getty kidnapping in the 1970s, and showing Christopher Plummer as J. Paul Getty not wanting to give up any of his money for a ransom. I felt very sympathetic towards that character, but I'm also watching Christopher Plummer, he's just amazing. This guy is ancient as all hell, but he's still just a spry old guy, acting and enjoying every moment of it every time you see him. I remember watching that and saying, he would make a terrific Scrooge. And so, lo and behold, same year, he also plays Scrooge in the movie I was talking about. And ironically, the same year, last year, he was also in The Star, where he played King Herod.
Yeah.
So,
all a bunch of coincidences.
Yes, I see Morgan face palming over here at the mentioning of The Star. So,
no, it was my eyebrow.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
it was.
I think that one of the things that really makes the telling of the behind the scenes of A Christmas Carol so interesting is that, for those who know about Charles Dickens, he was a guy who went from severe poverty, and all the experiences that he went through, he was able to put it into his books, and just basically relating to a bunch of characters in the sense of, when you see, Bob Cratchit celebrating a poor Christmas with his family and them being joyful, and seeing Scrooge as a rich man being incredibly miserable and stingy, it does really speak to a lot of what Dickens was going through. If you want to know more about the real life of, at least the closest to what Dickens was going through at the time, then David Copperfield would probably be the closest. He calls it like an unofficial autobiography of himself.
And funny enough,
sorry, go on.
I was just about to say, funny enough, Christmas Carol was the one that got him the most money, but also at the same time, it's the one that actually made him lose the most money, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, it was technically a hit, but one thing they don't tell you in The Man Who Invented Christmas was because he self-published everything, that took a dramatic hit to his wallet. Here he was his family was fairly well-to-do. He didn't have very many. He hadn't had a hit book in a long time, and that's why Christmas Carol was so crucial to him. But at the same time, he fun fact about Charles Dickens, and when it comes to being stingy or whatnot, he liked to he sued the hell out of people. He was just going through a lawsuit at the time when with one of his previous books, and they show him in the movie talking about, well, how much money can I get out of this, that, and the other.
What happened was there was a certain production company at the time that was doing a play version of it and was not authorized. So
that was a year later, yeah.
Yeah, so Dickens got all the money he had to get the best lawyer, and that's where his royalties pretty much went.
Yeah. We're kind of grateful in a sense that the story is now public domain, but
which is kind of crazy because, from what I understand, I mean, there's a lot of his descendants are still alive. I mean, they could have done the Rudyard Kipling route or the Edgar Rice Burroughs route, in which it's very protective amongst the estates.
Yeah, they could have done like something like the Roald Dahl estate and have it processed through the family.
Or they could be more or less the A.A. Milne route and continue suing the Disney company for as long as they live. So.
I thought they made some kind of a pact with them. Did I miss something?
It's probably settled down. I mean, you don't.
Yeah, but even then, I wouldn't be surprised. Very similar to Rudyard Kipling, they're kind of not happy with how it's, the characters are portrayed. I even heard in an episode of the Animated Anarchy podcast when they were talking about Jungle Book 2 that the Rudyard Kipling family estate were really, really upset that they changed Mowgli's name to Mowgli's name to Mowgli. It's actually pronounced Mowgli. And, they didn't really like the way that they simplified it and added way too many songs and got rid of the allegories of, from childhood to manhood. I mean, it's a really amazing episode. It's just essentially Disney, taking a look at the Jungle Book and asking his animators and his writers, hey, have you ever read this book? No? Well, we're going to toss it away. We're just going to do whatever the hell we want.
Oh, the Mary Poppins route.
Yeah, pretty much.
And yeah, people are excited to see the next movie coming out. Yeah, no wonder.
I'm not.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I was more of a Bedknobs and Broomsticks and Pete's Dragon kind of kid.
Well, but it has Angela Lansbury in the new movie. Maybe there's an extended universe here.
Look. I'll make this simple and basic. I don't hate Mary Poppins. I think it's a lovely movie. I'm just not a big enthusiast about it.
Me neither. I thought, personally, Bedknobs, Broomsticks enough. But I will say...
Bedknobs and Boobsticks?
That's the Triple X version. For anybody under 18 listening to this, I'm very sorry.
No, you must have it mistaken for the porno parody Bedknobs and Boobsticks.
Substitutionary locomotion. Mrs. Englewood Price, something weird's going on in my pants. Oh no, it's been removed!
Oh, yes.
Where's my knob?
I am not into. The only thing I liked about it was basically the mixture of. The only thing I liked about Mary Poppins was just a mixture of animation and live action. That was the coolest thing I ever saw when I was a kid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even better, Bedknobs and Boomsticks. This is the one with Ash Williams.
What? Why not? Just put. Well, then again, the main character was a witch, so.
I was going to say, jumping early to about Blackadder, there's another Christmas Carol adaptation that's almost sort of like that, and it's the Beavis and Butthead Christmas, where they had Beavis and the Scrooge roll.
Yeah, and in fact, it's just amazing that, without Beavis, I think Butthead became like this nice dude and everything, and everyone was happy. Legitimately, everyone was happy.
didn't see. No. You're thinking of It's a Wonderful Life parody they also do. That one, they put Beavis in the Scrooge role, and he gets visited by the ghost and stuff. He's like, "You wasted your life sitting on the couch not doing anything." Well, really? No, that sucks.
As a result, you never scored.
I love that.
That's why that particular one works, is because they're not really adapting A Christmas Carol per se. They're making fun of it.
Yeah, they even go as far as to show his own variation of the future, which is just like robots and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If we're thinking about other adaptations, I think that with Christmas Carol being as old as it is, I'm not surprised that anything that kind of spoofs A Christmas Carol would get, such rarity in terms of, we've been seeing the same story over and over and over again. Let's see what we can do to put a little comedy twist into it, which, with something like that, it's definitely a bit difficult, but if you pull it off right, it's very commendable to see it,
One of the best ways that you can put your own spin on it is a lot of the musical adaptations have by turning it into a musical, they somehow managed to make it a little bit more charming. You want to talk about one of your favorite adaptations, Morgan?
Oh, you mean the Vaulting Christmas Carol?
Yes, that one. Yes, the one where I play guitar on your front porch, but it's actually my front porch.
Oh man, I wish I filmed that a little better, but no, I see where you're going with that. We'll save discussion for that near the end. No, you're talking about the Albert Finney Scrooge, right?
I was talking about.
I know Basil Rathbone. Yeah. I was also going to turn to Kids in the Hall for a second there. And then when Basil Rathbone was in it, it was a Stingy Man Town. No, yeah, like a cape and everything. Yeah, it was a Stingy Man Town. No, he was like a detective and stuff. Stingy Man in Town. That one's interesting because it was an original production they did for TV, and it was live television. So for them to do that in the time, this is the 1950s, by the way, doing all these camera tricks, putting ghosts in the Jacob Marley scene without actually having people there, like it's a weird chroma key kind of stuff. It's still fascinating to see just that interpretation back then. You have all these numbers dictating the scene and the emotion, what's going on. You have little camera tricks here and there when it's transitioning from one scene to the next, and the design of the sets and the cinematography, not to mention the choreography of the dance sequences. Just seeing how they could take that story and adapt it for the time, and just exactly what they could do with it. It's just so interesting, just how it looks so groundbreaking back then. And you just see things like, the little boom mic hanging in one of the little scenes there. But just going by the music alone, they're just numbers I can still remember really, really well.
Can anybody be so stingy? So stingy.
One little boy is just a spot in all the human race. And then them later taking that and turning into the Rankin Bass Walter Matthau version.
Yeah, which we're not dissing. We were just talking about, animal characters.
I know. No, I was coming into that point, and just them, adding just a little bit of depth and emotion to it. The only problem with that, with both adaptations, that they don't spend a lot of time in Christmas future territory, but it still works on its own. There's still some aspects that do work pretty well. In terms of which one I favor more than the other, I kind of like them both. But if I had to be honest, there are some emotional stings in the Rankin Bass version I love so much. Especially Walter Matthau and that scene where he's realizing, oh my goodness, if this happens and I don't do anything to change, this is going to come all on me. Like when he starts, putting one and one together about Tiny Tim, that's a really good sequence. In the musical version, the entire song, One Little Boy, that's sung by Christmas Past. In the animated version, they change up a bit, so it's like a conversation between Christmas Past and Scrooge, where he's realizing what he's doing is wrong. And Christmas Past is still hammering it in, saying, that's what you thought not long ago, all this stuff.
Present.
And the bit with when they go to Christmas Past and he's seeing what he was like back then as a youth. I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It really escapes me. But just him with his past girlfriend, they have this whole dream of living in a castle and stuff, and that falls apart. That's another well done sequence. Though her
this is the one where they're doing
the
it
might have been a world of wonderful romance. In the animated version, it's a little more tragic, and I feel bad because they turn her into a widow, where else in the original book she remarries somebody else, and she still feels guilty in a way. But no, it's just that whole aspect, what you can do with that source and just turn into a musical adaptation. Like, yeah, you got stuff like the Albert Finney version, which is technically a spiritual successor to Oliver. But with some of this, it just feels a little more heartfelt and genuine, and not dissing the Albert Finney version at all. It was at that time period when they were doing roadshow movies with the bloated musicals and stuff, and that works well for the time period. But that one still has
the Christmas.
I hate people.
But let's be honest. I mean, you have to have at least some musical stuff in that type of, in the Christmas movie. It just
but things like that add some sort of heart and charm to it, because you're hearing things from the character's perspective in song, and it feels sort of genuine and serene. Like, you can make it syrupy and sweet, but when you add lyrics to it that feel so impounding, it just works. Just hearing it from Cratchit or even from one of the ghosts.
And let's not forget Alan Menken's superior adaptation, just going rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat.
Oh yes, with Sideshow Bob as Scrooge.
Yes.
You talk about adaptations. Everyone just seems to forgot about the 2009 adaptation of Christmas Carol with Robert Zemeckis and Jim Carrey mugging all around the entire movie for the most part.
Yes.
That what what was the but that was like nice little CGI that is right in the fix of right there in the whole uncanny valley. I saw them back in 2009. That looked bad then, and I was like, man, it did not age well at all.
Well, I think it's because there was wasn't there another CGI movie that came out in 2009?
Okay.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not doing some kind of a big trivia game or whatever, but there was another movie that came out around the holiday that had like this.
Avatar.
Thank you.
Okay.
Even though this came out literally a month before.
Well, here's my deal with the Robert Zemeckis version. As I've said before, I talked about Robert Zemeckis on my own show. He had big hits with movies like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Back to the Future, because he knew when to utilize the special effects, even if because then there was just a purpose for them. By this point, Polar Express and onward, there's this whole deal where special effects were everything, and I see he's dialed down from that in recent years, which I appreciate. But
these mobs.
It does not exist.
Let's
but anyway,
speak of it.
But yeah, Christmas Carol 2009 is kind of exactly what I'm talking about here. You have. For starters, I'm not going to diss Jim Carrey's portrayal of Scrooge here. I think whereas Uncanny Valley goes, he's got the perfect facial expressions to sort of overcome a lot of that. But the problem is the movie gets weird and scary at times, unnecessarily. It becomes like a PG-rated horror movie. And don't get me wrong, there are emotional beats in there from the source material that still are in the film and still work and whatnot. But why do we need a CGI chase sequence with a death horse carriage?
Padding.
Oh,
we're trying to make it impressive and go all 3D. It's not just about spending an extra $5 so you can experience things pointing at you. We need to make people feel like they're really there.
I should probably hear the audio commentary on that at some point to see what Zemeckis was thinking, because he does go into detail about this scene and that scene and why this scene is that and why we did this sort of thing. But I think that's a case where it just gets a little too literal in translation. And don't get me wrong, the George C. Scott version is as close to an actual perfect adaptation you can get, because it not only sticks to the source and makes little tiny alterations when it needs to, well, not regarding the Patrick Stewart version, which tries to be by the book, but even that changes a couple of things. But even the George C. Scott version, as literal as it gets, despite axing off a couple of scenes here and there, it still knows how to keep that balance between dark and light. Like the scene when Christmas Present and George C. Scott's Scrooge are visiting Bob Cratchit, and there's this little nice warm feeling at the same time Scrooge is, feeling guilty of himself, and Christmas Present, literally hammers it in right before they serve figgy pudding that you're a really terrible man. Almost to the point of screaming at him. But it's like literally right after they see Tiny Tim walk in or something like that, and he just says something to Scrooge about how he's, about his view of poverty and stuff. Here in the Zemeckis version, they're literally throwing in these dark images and all these dark scenes, and it's nice looking. It's showing that, look what we can do. We can do a little translation of this. We can actually do a literal view and visual style. And yeah, having something stylistic is great, but you got to dial back on a certain thing. So otherwise it'll look like Pink Floyd's The Wall. You have that scene there where Christmas Present is turning into a skeleton. Okay, I get it. When the 12 chime hits, Christmas Day is over and he ceases to exist. Okay, fine, I get that. But literally showing him just turning into a corpse, that's just pushing it. I remember I was dating Megan, and we were seeing that scene, and we were just looking at each other like...
Then that scene where the woman in the straitjacket just gets locked up into prison laughing maniacally. It's like, geez, man, relax.
Yeah.
That wasn't even in the source material.
No.
All he's supposed to do is show them, these are two children, this is ignorance and want, beware of them, yada, yada, yada.
Uh-huh.
And they don't mutate into bad people and all of a sudden get locked up and whatnot.
Turns into sweet for 30 seconds.
It's so way too over the top.
It almost was comedic in a way.
Some would say, hey, different adaptations, a different way of storytelling. This is a way to connect with the people, This is a way to connect.
And don't get me wrong, there were moments like that in other adaptations. Like, again, going back to Sid and Jesus Man in Town, when they go to Christmas Future, there's a scene where Scrooge is getting menaced by, I kid you not, a ballet of phantoms and dark hoods and stuff. And it's like, okay, that's fine because it's of the time period, but this adaptation is just really pushing its limits. Yeah. And what was up with that scene where he goes in the alleyway and there's all those weird, moldy, grimy people with bottles and stuff? That was weird.
Well,
it's not quite as horrifying as the time
I think the reason why they put that there is because I think we wanted to create a horror of the scene. And heck, some would say Scrooge was a little too on the nose when he was banging on the casket and such. Some would say that was a little too. But again, it's the way how it's executed. I think that it can get over excessive. But if you execute it right, you have a moment in the scene to say, some people like that quiet representation of like him looking at the grave and people not missing him, that sort of thing. But yes, some people need to have that loud type of moving into type of thing to really hammer it home.
The cremation scene in Scrooge I actually thought was fine as a kid. I mean, it was intense, but at least it wasn't like... could have been worse.
Yeah,
and Scrooge can do what it wants anyway because it's more of a parody of the story.
Yeah, it's doing this half parody, half mature presentation of the story. So, and I think the gist of that scene there, what you're missing the point is, one, his brother and his wife are only at his cremation and nobody else. So that it literally hits to him exactly who cares for him because of everything he's done. So I think that's why that scene works. It's not because he's in a coffin burning. It's because there's only two people there at his funeral. Nobody else gives a care about him because of what he's done.
Right.
That's what I think that scene is effective, because there's no one else there when he's in that moment.
there are always some moments in the story that were meant to be frightening. Jacob Marley's scene is always supposed to have some iota of frighteningness to it. Especially, I used to talk about how as a kid the Albert Finney version had the scariest Jacob Marley.
Come with me, Scrooge. We must go to the Dagobah system.
Honestly, what was your favorite version of Jacob? Is it just the plain clothes and the chains and because I always loved that. Like, these are the chains that hold the previous life.
I forged in life, link by link, yard by yard. Thanks, James. Because of that research we had to do for that two-parter we did.
Mm-hmm.
Every year we see a Christmas Carol adaptation, we always keep quoting the quotes whenever they do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is, I always like, that whole imagery of someone just feeling that the weight of all the things and the sins and everything and the missed opportunities that he had in their afterlives. That to me.
Oh, with the book I'm writing, wait to see the imagery I have in there.
Yeah.
There is something I'm doing a little Jacob Marley-esque, which I'll probably go into detail later.
It's amazing. Most people don't really, they see him as just the jumping point and the three ghosts of moment. But Jacob Marley is important. Just like he's like that first reminder of what, and not just group, but also the audience of like these things. If you do not change your ways, and this is the last chance. This is your last chance before you will be sentenced to the same life I have.
People give last chances. God does not. That's my philosophy. Where can we really go from here? I think we.
Well, let me put it this way: you were in a certain Christmas Carol adaptation that we haven't talked about all day.
Which one was that? Oh, yep. Yes.
The fun of doing our own variation, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, inspired by the Angry Video Game Nerd, maybe partially, but...
Well, there's others. There's definitely others that have done the same thing.
There's many others of this story. Personally, I'm more partial to It's a Wonderful Life. I think, again, that's my favorite.
I was going to do a version of that, but there were complications because that requires a whole lot of people to do. And I think with Christmas Carol, when I was doing that one, it was a little more simplistic. It was literally when I was doing season 3 of the show. And I just thought, oh yeah, it's a great idea. It's simplistic. It's easy to do. And originally it was going to be one entire episode, just building up to it. But I thought, no. Here's the fun of it. You have 3 ghosts, so that's 3 opportunities to do a film for each one that represents their own quota. You have the Christmas Sesame Street special representing the past and how good and bad that can be. Toys representing the modern era of Christmas, which is still as confusing but interesting as ever. And then you have Scrooge representing the future of Christmas Carol adaptations. But it's really the bookending segments, I think, that hold up a whole lot more than the reviews, in my opinion, because it's doing its own variation of A Christmas Carol. And if you look at the omnibus version that I did, which combines all the bookended stuff into one lengthy episode, I think that counts for like maybe 35 minutes or 40 minutes. It's just it's just telling that story. It works so well on its own if you just take out the review portions and just look at it as one big thing, because you still have that emotion, you still have that feeling of what A Christmas Carol is. It's scary, it's dark, it's interesting and funny when it needs to be. It's heartwarming. And when I had myself as the Scrooge role, I had to remind myself, okay, this is not me. This is, a grumpier version of me thinking of the holiday and these different variations of the ghosts. The one I oddly had the most trouble with was getting someone for Christmas present. And this is an interesting story. Originally, it was going to be Phil Bunny of the Bunny perspective, because I thought, wouldn't it be great having a foul-mouthed puppet as Christmas present? And in my mind, I pictured it was going to be like all green screen and stuff, and this is just, me on the side. And it was before I wrote the script, so I messaged Phil, and he said, oh, I'm flattered, but I don't think it can work. And so I figured, okay, maybe it's because I don't have the script typed up. So I'm not kidding here. In one day, I did all the bookending material sent him his portions, and he still rejected it, saying, dude, I told you it's not going to work. And I feel bad because there were so many funny jokes I had of him. Like when he fades out, it's because the drugs are wearing off and stuff like that. It would have been perfect. Oh, God, I'm freaking out, baby. That was like one of the lines I wrote in. So then Tony Goldmark was next, and I thought he'd be great for it. Just he's on this little portable DVD player, and things keep changing in the background. And when I offered it to him in his mind, when I offered it the part to him in his mind, he thought, oh, this would be great. I'll just have the two of us there and do our thing. And keep in mind, I'm over here in Massachusetts. He's in Florida doing his stuff. And in his view, he thought, oh, I'm close by. We can just do your material and go from there. And because I wasn't, he turned it down for that reason.
Really, that's sad. I would have done,
I would have, jumped on, and then that's how I ended up with Mike Janik, because I did a part for him, and I think, a little bit of a trade-off there and stuff. But I went with what I did, and I think it could have been a whole lot stronger in hindsight. I think Sarah should have been the Ghost Christmas Present. I think she could have added something to it. But that was just me in the moment thinking, okay, who's available and what can I do and all that sort of such. I think at the time she was... I don't know what my mindset was at the time. I probably should have asked her, and I feel bad for doing that. But you learn things as you go along. Obviously, and easily the best was easily Christmas Future, because that was all Sam.
Yeah.
I told him, you're doing Norm Macdonald as Christmas Future, and he had this presence, this voice. He did the little Gmod and stuff, and that was just great. Just him animating all the bits, like when he's ticking off, be subtle and point in areas where they get the friggin' idea. That was great.
I'm tired of doing the same thing every year. Be subtle, don't talk.
I think I saw the original scans of the animation. It's still a funny and very interesting performance. And instead of old age, the whole idea is that this Scrooge dies because of socialization, because it does make sense, because the people around you make the person that you are, and without that, you're practically nothing. You got nothing to hold on to, no one to talk to. And so that was one big alteration of the adaptation I was doing that was very, very important. Because in Christmas Carol, Scrooge is shutting off the holiday, but he's also shutting off people as well, people that are associated with the holiday. Yeah, he talks them to an arm-length basis. But what would it be like if he was completely antisocial? Like, wasn't really connecting with the world out there and the people that he knows or even befriends? And that was a very key element that I think really hit home in the end.
Mm-hmm. That was a fun special to be, not just to watch, but also to be part of. And that was why I think it was as successful as it was. I mean, we had the Mr. Code Awards at the time, and I remember you just came home with pretty much everything for that one episode.
Everyone was crossing their fingers. They were saying, okay, best series has to be vaulting, and there was like a 3-point margin, and Logan ended up getting it for he was animated movie reviews. But then I remember Mike saying to me, it's okay, mate, you got to put in the awards for Christmas Carol. It was like best writing, best 3-parter.
Yeah.
It really does show a lot of staying power, that you take what you got, and whatever you make with it, it all depends on what you do with it. And I didn't want to do this cheaply made, sloppy version, because I love A Christmas Carol, and I think it really shows in the final run. I mean, it's not a perfect product. Like I said, there's things I could have done a whole lot better, but I think in the long end, it still works. It still holds up for what it is, especially for that last act. Just the raw emotion. You really actually do see me break down. It's just perfect.
Yep, crying on screen there.
Yeah, that was really good stuff when I first saw it. And I almost wish that I could do something close to that, but I don't think my video persona has that type of meanness or type of, that type of like acting prowess to actually to really carry on that. But when you look at stuff like you see other people do that story, and you can look at other adaptations that actually mimic or type of story, the story arcs of it. Like I keep mentioning, It's a Wonderful Life, but it does have that. The stories of Wonderful Life have of like redemption, of realizing what you have and not becoming bitter or and losing yourself into it. I mean, you look again, you see other Christmas movies about that. What is their, the main theme of Christmas movies is like you have to recognize who you are, recognize the coming togetherness, family, friends. And, knowing things that like Nightmare Before Christmas or, The Grinch. No, not the new one, the one back in the 1970s and such,
60s.
The animated, no, the 60s, the animated one.
It's funny, too, because you can definitely see the effort that was poured into this one. I mean, at one point, I wasn't even going to finish it. Like, I was emotionally drained after doing part 2, and
I think I was there with you. Don't quit. You got to do this.
There was so much going on, family-wise, college-wise, and here I was doing this video, and this was right after part 2. I was just literally burnt out. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And I talked to Sarah, who was new at the time, and she said, look, you have all these people, coming to you, doing all their part and sending all this information. They're literally supporting you. They want to see this complete, and if you don't get it done, you're going to be letting them down, which is the ironic twist in the wrong one, in the long run. So it ended up being released, I think, in early January or maybe middle January, which, okay, fine. But just working at the 12th hour, trying to get that final nailed. I'm glad it was done, and would I ever do something like that again? I really don't know, because I almost died while working on that, because there was just so much going into it, special effects wise, editing wise. It was just so emotionally draining, but it was successful in the end, and that's the aspect of it. That was the upside, that if you can tell a story like that, then it shows exactly the lasting power you have as a storyteller and a writer and a performer, and that I always see as the crown jewel of my work.
Exactly.
It was inspiring to the point.
Sorry.
It was inspiring to the point where, for the longest time after that, I always thought there was a time where I thought about possibly doing From Pages to Pictures Christmas Carol, where instead of reviewing Christmas Carol adaptations, it would just be more along the lines of my personal relationship with the story of A Christmas Carol, and why I feel so ambivalent towards a lot of more contemporary adaptations. So if I was to put myself in the Scrooge role, then that would be the conflict there. Not that I hate mankind or anything like that, but why do so many current adaptations get it wrong?
I still dream of that version. We were going to have Mike Kimpton and Daniel Swallow, aka Sonic Guru, be the Marley brothers.
Yes,
but then Dan moved to Florida, and that kind of sort of slightly killed the idea a bit.
There's still possibilities out there.
Yeah.
Hey, we're still living, breathing, so the stories could still happen. But
I was gonna have. I was ambitious with this. I was gonna try and include song parodies of different Christmas Carol adaptations, including The Stingiest Man in Town, Muppet Christmas Carol. Take songs from that and rewrite the lyrics for it, just to make sure to make it work a little bit more. Like in terms of discussing modern Christmas Carol adaptations, I would have had a chorus come in and be like, "How can any movie be so cringy, so cringy, so cringy?" It's a movie that makes you frown.
You had a chance to be good, but the delivery wasn't right. How can these elements not connect so well? And yet Zemeckis' version doesn't seem so bright. You had a chance to be the best there ever was. You had a chance, but faithfulness is all it was. Your grimness is too literal in a sense. How you foul it up?
I don't need to write the song parodies. Just let this guy do it right here.
And the fun fact, that was all ad-libbed.
For the third act, for the Ghost of Christmas Future, I was going to have Sam come in and reprise the role of Norm. Instead of the moral being love Christmas for what's going to happen in the future. In the future, I was going to sit down and watch ABC Family doing 25 Days of Christmas Carol adaptations, and each one just gets worse and worse and worse as they go. And I sit down and say, are these the visions of things that will be, or the visions of things that might be only? And Norm just says, oh, it's going to happen, all right. You can't avoid that. But the important thing is to remember the Christmas Carol adaptations that you did like in the past. And then I was going to cut over to after that and say, well, to help you out here, we're inside of the studio right now with the executives watching everything. And I was going to cut to that scene from Scrooge where Bill Murray's watching.
No, I have to kill all of you.
This is what the executive had to say about it. No, I have to kill all of you. And I just be like, see, this guy gets it. But in this cut, Bill Murray actually takes out a button, presses it, and boom, the side of the building explodes.
Credits.
And I'm just sort of sitting there with the Ghost of Christmas Future watching Slackjawed like, that happens? Shit.
And then I walk across and I say, hey, what's that, Jaimetud? And you just lose your mind and everything. I hate this, damn it, and just lose crazy or something like that.
Nobody can get my name right in this future. That's what happens to me. I become so negative on Christmas Carol adaptations, they can't get my name right.
No. Yeah.
So you go back to the present. I'm hanging out with these guys and with anybody who signs on to this. And when discussing what makes what makes a Christmas Carol work, and one thing that relates to me about Scrooge's character is I don't think the greed is necessarily the problem, because a lot of people who earn a lot of money can do good things with their money. You know, they donate to charities and do all this wonderful stuff, but it's just his view of mankind that is what's killing him. And it's simplified early on in the story. Matter of fact, here's an idea. If they want to flip around a Christmas Carol in the future, they should have 3 people posing in the role as Christmas ghosts who hate this one guy who's really, really rich for all the stuff, for all the accumulation of wealth that he has. But when they go through the different beats of past, present, and future, he's showing all the good things that he did with his money. Instead, they just the guys in the roles of past, present, and future are the ones who realize, wait a minute, we just sort of assumed he was greedy and bad because he had all the money.
Oh no, the person you're looking for is down the street.
Yes. Maybe it would be a short adaptation, but it would be a fun way to sort of poke fun at Christmas Carol.
As a cute little joke that kind of works maybe for like a short sketch, but as like a lengthy, we have a radio program that actually might work.
Yeah, I'm saving a Halloween Carol for that, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, so in the end, you're dumped with I realize the special of Halloween, and then a bunch of candy falls on you or something, right?
Something like that.
Oh, like you say, oh my God, I got a scary guts, and they're like, oh wait, it's candy.
Yeah, I know exactly. This is what people do when they celebrate Halloween. Mrs. Scrooge, they like to go see Rocky Horror live, and they make fun of the film. All right. Well, I think we're coming down to the end of it here.
Yeah, there's not much else you can talk about. I mean, there's tons of adaptations out there. It's still going on. It's like Frankenstein and all those others. It's pretty much an easily remakeable story, just as long as you have the right parts in play. There's a simple formula to it. It just really depends on how you craft it.
Yeah. You can do it the right way, or, well, sometimes you can do it the wrong way. And sadly, most people, there are ones that do the wrong way, but there are so many others that do it the right way.
Really screw it up.
But yeah,
and in some cases you can do it without the Christmas Carol formula, or even take that formula and put it to a different tune, like Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. Okay, yeah. Come on. The joke with the raining condoms, that was clever.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is an 80s movie. I don't think this came out recently.
No. It was recent. Matthew McConaughey was in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey, the dude who wasn't born a star and he's actually looked like getting an Oscar, that dude?
Yep.
Yeah. It's more of a rom-com than a Christmas Carol adaptation, I think. But anyway...
Yeah, so I think that for the most part, you're right, that out of all the stories based off of Christmas, A Christmas Carol is definitely one of the most famous, if not the most famous. I mean, even with Charles Dickens writing so many, shorts based off of Christmas and many poems, none can really stand out compared to A Christmas Carol. There's a reason why a lot of people have made their adaptations of it. It's a story that a lot of people can relate to, and it does have a wonderful message in the end with great characters. So it definitely does give you a sense of Christmas joy and a sense of the Christmas spirit that not a lot of specials or books or movies or what have you have done, even before, even since then. So,
and by the way, I'm sorry about that. I made a mistake. It wasn't. He wasn't in Born to Be Star. He was in, I believe, White Boy Rick. So Matthew McConaughey. So yeah. Sorry about that. But yeah, Christmas Carol. One of the most. The most important film in this Christmas era to tell people about. It's never too late to be the redemption. Always try to be nice and kind, and don't be a prick.
Sure.
Don't be a Scrooge.
Yep, there you go.
Right.
Don't be a Scrooge.
And
if you'll excuse me, I'm off to the Dickens Fair. Lipsticks.
Okay. All right. Well, while James is heading over to the Dickens Fair, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on by. I hope that you guys have yourself a wonderful holiday and a Happy New Year. Yeah, well, right before you go, I'd like to know if you have any things to plug or promote or anything like that.
Oh, well, the Duke CT Lounge has recently passed 65,000 subscribers. They'll describe me downloads. My brain just went off weird. But yeah, 65,000 downloads and continue to go strong. I expect to get 70,000 by January. And hopefully you will have that, we'll be joining in that number two, people who are listening and watching this. Also, Last Reviewer Standing just recently got a nice video of a Ratchet and Clank video, the last of the PS2 games of that series, and I am continually working on other things, and that's pretty much it.
All right.
I have From Pages to Pictures a Christmas Story showing up in a couple of days, so listen out for that. Morgan has left the building.
All right, that's fine. Well, I'll definitely plug and promote vaulting on the description box. And as for me, by the time that this podcast is out, I'm hoping to post a very special Christmas video, one that I've been working on for 2 years now, that I should have posted a while ago, but I was doing a lot of research for a particular segment that pretty much nobody knows about, and that's why it took me that long to do it. So I hope that the wait will be worth it. So yeah, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know in the comments below about what was your first Christmas Carol adaptation, or were you first introduced to the book? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? And who's your favorite Scrooge? And what other stories would you like to see adapted besides Christmas Carol? That's it, everybody. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.
Ciao for now.
See y'all later.